millions of us woke up to freezing temperatures this morning. Melbourne's minimum was 1.6 degrees Celsius. In Sydney, it was 7. And the freezing temps also hit Tasmania and the ACT. It is a cold winter's day. And in these cold months, we of course need heating, we need gas, we need reliable power resources. And most of our energy relies on traditional resources, as coal and gas account for around 70% of electricity generation. Now, to think that Labor wants to eliminate those sources in just a few years, despite it powering 70% of our electricity generation, is enough on cold days like this to give you frostbite. And so today, the Coalition finally drew a line in the sand, announcing its long-awaited nuclear energy policy, which it will take to the next federal election. Australians now have a decision to make. Do you want nuclear or do you accept the status quo? Simple. It is a simple prospect being put to us voters.
If we want to set our country up for the future, if we want to bring those electricity prices down, if we want to make a stable economy, and if we want to grow that economy, and if we want to grow jobs for generations to come, our country must seize this opportunity now.
Now, the opposition leader has boldly committed to 7 nuclear power plants from zero. And this is not a small target opposition, which has pledged to achieve net zero by 2050 with a mix of gas, renewables, but ultimately nuclear. The potential sites are Queensland's Collide and Tarong power stations, New South Wales' Old Liddell power station and Mount Piper, Victoria's Latrobe Valley, WA's Collie power station and South Australia's Northern power station. Now, these are communities with a long-standing industrial history and, of course, an existing workforce, so it does make sense to mark these locations, as the Shadow Energy Minister points out.
One of the benefits of zero-emissions nuclear power plants is you can leverage existing infrastructure. So instead of what Labor wants, nearly a 100% system based on renewables, predominantly wind and solar, not done anywhere in the world, by the way, they want it in Australia, and that's why we're looking at up to 28,000 kilometres of new transmission lines. Of course, when you bring nuclear into the mix, because it has such density, it uses up such little land.
Make no mistake, this is a big political gamble, one the Coalition thinks it can win. And Dutton is so confident he believes he can build 2 reactors by 2037.
I'm very happy for the election to be a referendum on energy, on nuclear, on power prices, on lights going out, on who has a sustainable pathway for our country going forward.
It really does set up an energy showdown, and I thought these comments by the South Burnett Regional Council Mayor Cathy Duff on Sky News were very telling. Now, this is one of the councils whose area has been chosen in Queensland as a site of a nuclear reactor.
I welcome the fact that we are being considered for nuclear because we're very disappointed with the rollout of renewables. We're upset about the way our landscape's going to look covered in wind and solar. It's dividing our communities. So we're definitely looking for alternatives, and nuclear is one that we want to have a look at and for our community as a viable option.
So on the other end, Labor, as you've heard, is tearing up the landscape on a platform of achieving climate targets on renewables only, something no other country in the world has been able to achieve. It is a plan running on a whim and a prayer. All the warnings are there. Our transition to renewables is happening back to front. The energy market operator is warning of a summer of blackouts due to delays in transmission lines and renewable projects. AEMO said this has resulted in the increased risk of power shortages in Victoria and New South Wales for the next 4 summers, would you believe, and in South Australia for the 2026-27 summer. It also says large users may need to switch off plants to avoid blackouts. I mean, seriously, the path we are on is complete madness. In February, Victoria's Loy Yang went offline after a freak storm, leaving more than 530,000 without power. And in New South Wales, residents were told by the Labor state government to turn off air conditioning and delay using appliances in the middle of a heat wave because the energy grid wasn't coping. Is this a peep into the future on a renewable-only magic carpet ride? Heatstroke versus frostbite, take your pick. Meanwhile, the Eraring coal fire station has had its life extended. Say no more. Yet Chris Bowen will tell you to
stick with the plan to get to 82% renewables, to stick with the plan for the cheapest form of energy, which is renewables, to stick with the plan which has seen renewable energy up by 25% since we came to office.
Yeah, a plan that has gone so well for you, old mate, when electricity prices have risen by double-digit rates across the past 2 years. And that was without that $275 in energy relief, of course. So why not let us voters decide whether we do want to stick to your plan? But he didn't stop there.
Mr Dutton wants to be cut off from the rest of the world. Mr Dutton's isolated here. He's isolated from his state and territory parties. He's isolated from the business community. He's isolated from the science community. He's isolated from sensible policy. Mr Dutton's out on his own.
So is Bowen seriously saying he would be isolated from the rest of the world when more than 30 countries have nuclear power plants?
Do you think that the collective intellectual might of Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese outweighs that of 19 of the top 20 economies in the world, their leaders? I mean, is that a serious proposition? I don't think so.
Now, look, watch out, because Labor will focus on big, bad nuclear scare campaigns. In fact, we've been given an exclusive look at just one of those they're going to roll out.
All right, we eat tonight.
Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, it writes itself, doesn't it? Labor is drumming up a scare campaign despite acquiring nuclear submarines for the Navy. So as the winter bites, can we really rely on renewables only for years to come? For generations to come, my generation, future generations, we need cheap, reliable energy. And it cannot be denied there is, of course, a fight ahead for the opposition. But if we don't make that change and look at proven alternatives like nuclear, we will forever risk being plunged into Labor's darkness on these cold winter nights.